WCL created one of the first centers for human rights in US law schools. And I think that that speaks volumes about the unique character of WCL as a place where we not only think about law, but we actually do law. The center has been, I think, instrumental in enhancing human rights education for 3 decades, and many of our students have become prominent human rights defenders. The center has contributed to change the way we think about human rights in general, because we not only treat human rights as an area of legal practice and put a lot of our energy into enhancing human rights standards and promoting and protecting human rights locally and globally, but we also think of human rights as a specific framework for the practice of law, regardless of the area of practice. The center has really built a connection between theory and practice, allowing our students to immerse themselves in real life projects and causes. And through doing that, we have, I think, enhanced the commitment that law schools in general should have with teaching generations of lawyers who live by international human rights standards. I think our law school has set the tone and the example that other law schools have followed. And I'm looking forward for the center to keep doing that for the next 30 years. In the next 30 years, I see a combination of things. I'm worried about where we're going with human rights. I think that there are good news. One of the good news is that I think human rights has become more sensitive and aware of issues regarding specific populations. So human rights, I think it was at the start, it was just as the societies that were that contribute to the creation of the new international human rights model, and as such, it was a little bit patriarchal and a little bit too oblivious to the marginalization of people based on race, based on sexual orientation, based on gender identity. Those two didn't even exist. Were totally invisible. So I think that the good news is that in the next 30 years, we will see a lot more development in terms of understanding human rights from the perspective of the persons who suffer the oppression of countries. And that means, I think, more standards and more preoccupation about race issues and gender identity and sexual orientation. I'm hoping that we will also see more prominently issues of indigenous populations as well. I think that that's the good news, but things that worry me that I think in the next 30 years we will see more a comeback to the more traditional thinking about the connection between human rights and democracy. I think that we are experiencing an erosion in democracy around the world, and that, of course, when democracy is undermined, there is a spike on human rights violations of the worst kind. And so I think that we are now, again, we will have a revival on the issues of freedom of expression, on, of course, integrity and life, arbitrary detention. I think that those are issues that I don't see going away anytime soon. So I think I'm worried about that aspect of where we will be in 30 years when it comes to democracy. And I think that there are new challenges that have to do with the fact that today, some of the most powerful entities around the world are not the governments, but oppression may come from other units, not only in terms of companies and the development of business and human rights, but I'm thinking about all the issues that come with technology and social media, and how those have on a way contributed to protecting and helping human rights defenders, but on the other hand have also created issues in terms of right to privacy, right to integrity in life, how more vulnerable populations can become even more vulnerable through advanced technology. So I think that those are the type of challenges and things that I see for the next 30 years. I would say to young human rights lawyers that international human rights is an area that requires a lot of patience. And I think that the younger we are, the less patient we are as well. And sometimes it can be very frustrating because we see that change takes a long time, and it's not even unidimensional. It's not even going in one direction, but it takes a lot of waves. So there is some advance, and then we have some backward coming again. So it requires a lot of patience. So the first thing that I would say is that in terms of the practice of human rights, it requires patience without losing optimism and idealism, which are very, very important. The other thing that I would say to a young human rights lawyer is that you don't have to be working in an NGO or for the UN or for an international organization, regional or big employer to be a human rights lawyer. I think that in the ideal world, we should all be human rights lawyers. And it's not rhetoric what I'm saying. I think that regardless of the practice of law, we should all have some engagement with a practice that has a connection with human rights. And you can call it public interest, you can call it human rights, you can call it, public defenders' work. There are many different ways of looking at human rights without the label of human rights. And I would hope that we aspire and that we reach, that we move into a direction where we're really trying for everyone to have a component of even if it's pro bono work, that is connected to those areas where we see most suffering, and we create lawyers with an idea that you're just not a human rights lawyer when you're practicing human rights as an international human rights body, but of a piece of area of law, but that you have a commitment to human rights as a way of living, as a standard of life. That I think that that's our obligation as lawyers. So those would be my two pieces of advice for young lawyers.